Chapter 6 Plant Nutrition Lesson 1 Photosynthesis. Again, these are the objectives of the photosynthesis lesson. Please make sure that you cover them by the end of your studying. What is photosynthesis? Please, any definition is very important. You have to learn it by heart and memorize it very well. It is the process by which plants synthesize carbohydrates from raw materials using energy from light. Please make sure that you mention the keywords. First, that it is a process. Happens in plants and the product is carbohydrates from raw materials using energy from light. Why didn't I say sunlight? Because actually any type of light can help photosynthesis or can be what photosynthesis needs. So in photosynthesis, light energy is transferred into chemical energy. Where do we store this energy, the chemical energy? It's stored in the bonds of the glucose molecule. So the chemical bonds of the glucose molecule contains a lot of energy that will be released once this glucose molecule gets broken down. When do we break it down? Yes, in aerobic respiration inside the mitochondria. So again, photosynthesis takes the light energy and transfers it through chemical reactions into a chemical energy. This chemical energy is in the bonds of the glucose molecule. It is the fundamental source of food for all living organisms. Why do I say that? We eat meat, yes, but from where do we get meat? From an animal that ate plants. So any food chain, we will learn later what's a food chain, but any food that you get must start from a plant. So the plants are the only ones who are capable to take the light from the sun and change it into chemical energy in food. Any food that you will eat, anything in your plate came originally, or the energy in it came originally from plants by the process of photosynthesis. So it is the main source of oxygen. Why? Because photosynthesis not only produces glucose, but also it produces oxygen. So it takes in carbon dioxide and produces oxygen. Is all the oxygen released for us to use? Actually, no. Some of it is used inside the plant itself. Why? Because the plant cells undergo cellular respiration or aerobic respiration just like animal cells. So not all the oxygen produced is released as a waste product, but some of it will be used for the aerobic respiration of the plant cell itself. It regulates the concentration of oxygen, carbon dioxide on Earth, of course, because imagine the world without the plants taking in carbon dioxide and giving us back oxygen. What will happen? Carbon dioxide from aerobic respiration of all the other creatures will keep accumulating, and eventually oxygen will end up. There will be no more oxygen. So the organism responsible for the rearrangement of the concentration of those two very important gases is the plant. So we learned that photosynthesis is a chemical reaction. What's the equation of this chemical reaction? As you already know, any chemical reaction needs an equation. We have the word equation of photosynthesis, which means that we will just mention the reactants, which are the starting materials of the chemical reaction, and the products, which are the ending or what comes out of this chemical reaction. So for photosynthesis, we will start with, or our reactants will be carbon dioxide and water. And in the presence of sunlight and by chlorophyll, those two very simple primitive reactants will change into glucose, full of energy and oxygen that we need for breathing and respiration. So what's the chemical equation? The chemical equation will mention exactly the number of carbon dioxide molecules that will enter this reaction and the exact number of water molecules that will enter the reaction. So it has to be balanced, which means that, for example, the same number of carbons that will enter the reaction must be equal to the same number of carbons that will come out of the reaction. So let's look at this chemical equation. We have 6 carbon dioxide molecules plus 6 water molecules, and I will get 1 glucose molecule and 6 oxygen molecules. So please remember the chemical equation with its balancing numbers because they are very important. So again, let's have a look at the raw materials of the photosynthesis. What were the raw materials again, or the reactants? They were water and carbon dioxide. We use them to form finally our glucose. But from where does the cell get those reactants? The cell gets those reactants. First, let's take a look at the carbon dioxide, for example. The carbon dioxide, as you see here, moves by diffusion into the cell. Remember diffusion? Diffusion is the movement of any molecule from the high to the low concentration, automatically and without the use of energy from the cell. So the carbon dioxide molecules, since they are usually used up inside the leaf for photosynthesis, so the concentration of the carbon dioxide will always be less inside the leaf. While outside in the air, due to the aerobic respiration of all of those creatures, including the plants themselves, there is a lot of carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide will always move from outside the leaf to inside the leaf through pores or holes at the bottom side of the leaf called the stomata. Okay, so this is where the carbon dioxide comes from. What about water? Water is taken by the root hair cell. Remember the root hair cell from the specialized cells? Root hair cell had a very special figure with a finger-like projection to allow the absorption of the water and any other materials needed by the plant. Remember it? And of course, it was under the soil to absorb all those materials. So water enters by osmosis. What was osmosis? It was the movement of water molecules from high water potential to low water potential. So here we have a lot of water, and inside the cell, it's concentrated cytoplasm. So the water will always move by osmosis from the high to the low concentration. Chlorophyll is found in the chloroplasts. Where do we find the most chloroplasts? In the palisade mesophyll cells. Remember them? Here they are. Can you see them? They are full of chloroplasts. Okay, what are they responsible for? Trapping the light energy in order to convert it to chemical energy by making glucose molecules that have a lot of energy in their bonds. Product materials. So now the reaction started and all the ingredients are there, all the reactants are there. Now, after the photosynthesis reaction takes place, we get glucose and oxygen. So, why does the plant bother itself to do all this process? Is it just to feed us? No, actually, the carbohydrates are not only useful for us as energy, also the plant needs the carbohydrates. Remember when we said that the plant makes aerobic respiration itself also, but only for releasing energy by aerobic respiration? Actually, no. Also, to store it to use later. What do I mean by this? I mean that the glucose gets combined together. Remember the biological molecules when we said that the monomer is glucose, but the polymer is the starch in plants. So starch is the storage form of glucose or of carbohydrates in plants. So the plant will collect the glucose together to form a starch molecule for storage, so that when it needs this glucose, it will be easily broken down again and change into glucose. Who remembers when I am breaking down which kind of metabolic reactions I use? Exactly, I use catabolism. But the photosynthesis process is which type of metabolic reactions? It's anabolism or building. That's correct. So, why does the plant need energy from aerobic respiration? For all of its functions. Anything that makes it living needs energy. And one of the many important points that's specific for plants is providing it with the minerals and ions from the soil. So what? Don't they go in by diffusion? No. Sometimes they need a push. They need a push against the concentration gradient. What does this mean? This means that the magnesium, for example, for the chlorophyll is pushed inside the plant. Even if the plant or the root hair cell has a lot of magnesium, it needs to take more and more to send it up to the leaves to make more chlorophyll. Why? Because it's very important for photosynthesis. So now, if the root hair cell has a lot of magnesium, so the magnesium will not move inside just by diffusion. It needs a carrier protein to snatch it from the soil and push it inside the cell. And this process needs energy, and this is active transport. Now the leaf has glucose, but it can't be easily transported as glucose. It needs to be made into a disaccharide. Remember, what does di mean in Latin? It means two. So a disaccharide means two molecules together. But two molecules of what? Two molecules of sugar. So a disaccharide that contains glucose is called a sucrose. It will be moved in a transport system phloem. So the phloem takes the sucrose and transports it to other parts of the plant. Also, we need glucose to build cellulose. As we learned before, again, glucose is the monomer or the single unit. When it's put in a long and a straight chain, it makes cellulose. And why do we need cellulose again? To build the cell walls. Making nectar to attract pollinators. What are pollinators? Can you see this? This is a bee that's moving from one flower to another. Carrying what? Carrying the pollen grains from one flower to another. Why? Because the flowers are the reproductive organs of the plants. We will take this in details in the reproduction chapter. But now all you need to know is that for those pollinators to get attracted to the flower, they need something called the nectar. The nectar attracts them because they feed on it. It's full of glucose for their energy. So, and it has a specific smell for all the bees and all the insects. So when they get attracted to this flower, they will carry with them the pollen grains to put it in another flower or even to another part in this flower to help the reproduction system to work, okay? And for seeds to form and then new plants to form, okay? Making amino acids. Hold on. Amino acids, these are the monomers for proteins. And we're talking about glucose. How do we use glucose to make amino acids? Remember when we said, while we were studying the biological molecules, that the carbohydrate or the glucose is made from carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, right? What about the amino acids of proteins? We use the same elements but in different ratio, and we add nitrogen, or in few proteins we need sulfur. So from where does the plant get the nitrogen? So now we know that the plant will get the carbon and the hydrogen and the oxygen from the glucose. But from where will it get the nitrogen? From the nitrate ions in the soil. So again, this is another job for the root hair cell to take all the nitrate ions from the soil into the root and then to the rest of the plant in order to join the carbon and the hydrogen and oxygen from the glucose and form the proteins the plant needs. Why does the plant need proteins? Is it building muscles? No. Remember when we said in biological molecules that proteins are very important for growth, repair of living organisms, tissues, and cells. Also, they are important for any protein channel or any carrier protein on the cell membrane. They make most of the hormones and enzymes, and hormones and enzymes are not specific for animals. Plants also need hormones and enzymes. So making other substances. So glucose is also used to make chlorophyll itself, which is made of magnesium and nitrogen. Again, from where do we get magnesium and nitrogen? Our hero here, yes, the root hair cell. We'll always pick anything that the plant needs from the soil, either by diffusion, osmosis, or even active transport like the magnesium here. And then, without these ions, plant leaves will look yellow and will not be able to make photosynthesis. So, making chlorophyll is very important for the plant. Factors affecting photosynthesis, or the rate of photosynthesis, or photosynthesis as a process to happen or not. First, the supply of raw materials, our reactants. If we don't have carbon dioxide or oxygen, photosynthesis process will stop and no more glucose will be made. The amount of sunlight or light energy. So, the source of light energy and how strong this source is very important to affect the rate of the photosynthesis. The temperature, as this affects the activity of enzymes. Remember, every enzyme has a range of temperature. Above this range, it's going to be denatured, and below this range, it's going to be denatured also. So temperature will affect the activity of the enzyme and accordingly will affect photosynthesis as an anabolic reaction. The quantity of chlorophyll in the leaf. Of course, if I have more chlorophyll, I have more people doing photosynthesis, as if the palisade cell is a factory and each chlorophyll is a worker doing its work to make the food. So if I have more workers, I will get more glucose. But if I have less workers, less chloroplasts and chlorophyll, so this means that this leaf, this factory, will produce less glucose. Investigations. I will put for you the videos for those investigations from YouTube in the description of this video. Please check those videos. They are very important, and those tests are very important, not only for paper 3 and paper 1, but also for paper 6. Our first investigation here is to investigate that the leaves undergo photosynthesis and produce starch or not. In order to test for starch, from your previous knowledge in biological molecules, I will use iodine. So, can I see the change of the brown into the blue-black over the green leaf? And more importantly, will the starch be appearing without me breaking down the cell membranes and the cell walls to release this starch from inside the cells? Of course not. So I will go through the steps of this investigation for 2 reasons: to break down the cells and release the starch, and also to change the color of the leaf into white, and then I will test it with iodine and see the blue-black color. The next investigation, it is the necessity of chlorophyll for photosynthesis. We will get a very specific type of leaves, variegated leaves. Taken from the plant, I will go through the whole process again. So it has to be a photosynthesizing plant, of course, because if the plant was kept in the dark or it wasn't well treated, it does not have enough raw materials, this will not be a fair test. Okay, so I have to bring a photosynthesizing plant with the variegated leaves, and I will go through the same steps, but this time I will observe the locations of the blue-black color. And surprisingly, you will see that the blue-black color will be exactly in the same places that were originally green, but the places that were white, they will not contain any starch. And this proves that chlorophyll is very important for photosynthesis. The next investigation, it investigates the importance of the light intensity for the rate of photosynthesis. And it will use this apparatus. Please check the video for the steps. It's very interesting and nice. And how do they measure the amount of photosynthesis or the rate of photosynthesis? They measure it by counting the bubbles of oxygen coming out of the plant. Please check the video to see the steps and the details of this investigation too. And another investigation talking about or discussing the necessity for light generally for photosynthesis. And this depends on placing a dark cardboard over the leaf and then testing it with the same steps as previous, removing the light and then testing using iodine to see where is starch made. And surprisingly, the place that was covered with the black cardboard will be empty of starch. And please again check the steps of this investigation in the link of the video that I will provide you. And the last investigation, it's about the necessity of carbon dioxide. Is carbon dioxide essential for photosynthesis? Also, I will put for you the details of the experiment, but as you see, it depends on putting the leaf or a part of it into a jar and putting potassium hydroxide to absorb all the carbon dioxide from this jar, and then testing this leaf with the same methods as before. Again, we will boil it and then remove its color and then test it with iodine to see where we can find starch, and we will find that the part that was deprived of carbon dioxide will always lack the presence of starch. Now let's solve some questions together. Which process does not release carbon dioxide to the atmosphere? The only process that will not release carbon dioxide to the atmosphere is the photosynthesis process. Actually, it absorbs all the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Because respiration of plants, of course, respiration takes oxygen, releases carbon dioxide. Respiration of animals takes oxygen, releases carbon dioxide. And decomposition we will learn later. And as I told you before, even in the classified questions, there are parts from other lessons that are not related to just this lesson, because the biology content is diffuse, it's mixed together. The diagram shows a cell. So I have a big cell here in the middle with group of bacteria around its edges. So I have bacterial groups around the edges of my cell, as you can see here. Okay, bacteria moves to areas of high concentration. This is a piece of information. That this bacteria will move specifically to the areas with high oxygen concentration. Which process in the cell causes the bacteria to form these groups? So look here, the bacteria that is seeking oxygen is concentrated in these areas specifically. What is this thing that's closer here? It is a spiral-shaped chloroplast. What's the function of the chloroplast? It takes in carbon dioxide and releases oxygen. So which process in the cell causes the bacteria to form these groups? They are standing here to take the oxygen that's coming out of this chloroplast. The chloroplast makes the oxygen by photosynthesis. Which process in plant cells uses chlorophyll? Which one? It's nutrition. Why? Because Photosynthesis is how the plant makes its own food. When does respiration take place in animals and plants? When? When does it happen? When does respiration happen? It happens all the time. There is a common misconception here that respiration only happens in animal cells but not in plant cells. That's not true. From where will the plant get its energy? And there's another common misconception that the plant cells make photosynthesis when they have light and they make cellular respiration when they don't. Example, at night. That's not true. The plant undergoes cellular respiration all the time because it's a living organism that needs energy all the time. It only undergoes photosynthesis in the presence of light. Okay, the diagram shows an apparatus used in an experiment or investigation to measure the rate of oxygen produced during photosynthesis. The investigation was repeated several times, and the average amount of gas collected was calculated. Which two factors must be kept constant during this investigation? This is a side information that you need to know. What's kept constant in an investigation is called the controlled variable. You need to control all the other conditions to make sure that you get a fair test, that you get a real result. Because if you keep a lot of variables, you will not know which one is affecting the result. So you need to make sure that you're testing only one factor while the others are kept constant or they are kept controlled. Okay, so which two factors will you keep controlled here? Yes, the size of the aquatic plant. Because if I change the size of the aquatic plant, I will not make sure or I will not be sure that the rate of oxygen is because any other factor or that it really changed. Maybe it's because I have more plants here, so the rate of oxygen definitely will change. Also, the duration of exposure to light. If I'm gonna leave it for 1 hour, for example, I have to do the same every time I repeat it or with the different other samples in order to make sure that it is a fair test, testing the amount of gas collected. Now, this is a paper 3 question. Figure 3.1, and as we agreed before, it's very important to read the name or the number of the figure in order to look in the right direction. As you see here, the same question contains many figures, so I have to make sure that I'm looking at the right figure. So figure 3.1 shows variegated leaves. Again, what are variegated leaves? These are leaves that contain green and white colors. On de-starched plant. De-starched plant means that the plant was kept in the dark for at least 24 hours in order to make sure that the photosynthesis process has stopped and I don't have any storage of starch. One of the leaves was covered. So look here at figure 3.1. This is a variegated plant, which means that I have a green area and a white area, mostly on the edges of the leaf. And I took one leaf of them and I covered it with a cover. And this plant was de-starched. Okay, the plant was left in bright light for 24 hours. Just after it was de-starched, I will take it and put it in bright light for 24 hours, keeping the cover, okay? Then the cover was removed from the leaf. After the 24 hours, I will remove the cover. The leaf was tested for the presence of starch. So now I have a variegated plant and a part of the leaf that was covered for 24 hours after the plant was de-starched. Okay, suggest which areas of the leaf as shown in figure 3.2. So now I will look at 3.2 would have contained starch after the 24 hours. Let's take a look at the table and look at the areas in figure 3.2. Here we have area K. Where's area K? Area K is on the edge, and the edge of the variegated plant is usually white, right? So will it be a tick or a cross? Actually, it's gonna be across. Why? Because area K usually is a white area, and white areas don't have chlorophyll, and it will not be able to undergo photosynthesis, so starch will be absent. What about area L, here in the middle of the green area and not covered by the cover? Yes, starch present. What about area M here? Of course not. It's mostly white, and also it was covered for 24 hours. Area N, it could have had starch if it wasn't covered by the cover, because it's a green area, but it was covered by the cover. So now you understand the idea. Give reasons for your suggestions for areas K and L. So now you will explain and give the reason why you said that area K contains no starch. So area K is white and therefore no chlorophyll. No chlorophyll, no photosynthesis. So the test will be negative for starch, of course. Give reason questions have to be answered in a very small paragraph. Area L. So we said that area L would test positive for starch. Why? Because area L has chlorophyll and also was subjected to light energy because it wasn't covered. So that's why it can do photosynthesis and will be able to make starch. This is the mark scheme. These are the 2 marks for each one of them. These are the keywords. No chlorophyll or no chloroplasts, cannot do photosynthesis, cannot form starch. This slash means or. And this is 1 mark, this is the 2nd mark. Area L, both, you have to mention both, light and chlorophyll. Also, it can do photosynthesis or can form starch. These are marks 3 and 4. Starch is formed from a simple carbohydrate. Name the process carried out by plants to produce carbohydrates. Photosynthesis, of course. Which gas is released from the leaf when simple carbohydrate is being produced? Oxygen, of course, as a byproduct or waste. Thank you, and I hope this video helps you study.